to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV and on your radio. We're all the way through until midday as well. And, of course, is it time now to get over Partygate and focus on the real issues affecting this country?
Yes, and should a political defection trigger a by-election? We'll be discussing that with Michael Portillo. We've got the latest on the Ukraine situation as well, and much, much more across the next 2 hours. So make sure you get in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those as well throughout the show. But first, let's give you the latest news.
A very good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright here in the GB News newsroom to get you up to date. The Health Secretary says the Prime Minister is not going anywhere as the number of MPs, a number of them, backtrack on their call for him to resign. The Telegraph newspaper is reporting that up to 7 MPs have withdrawn their letters of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Well, the Prime Minister has been under intense pressure over the Partygate saga this week, and Sue Gray's inquiry into events in Number 10 during lockdown is now expected next week. Well, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves will be meeting Christian Wakeford in his Bury constituency later today after his defection from the Conservative Party to the opposition. Rachel Reeves says she's happy to have him as a Labour MP and is looking forward to getting to know him. The former Deputy Labour leader, Tom Watson, says the jury's out on who will win the Bury South seat in the next general election.
I guess for the country, it's theatre. I guess in the long run, it shows that Keir Starmer is sort of getting the Labour Party back to the mainstream, is more credible. The real test is at a general election, and will he be able to consolidate that position into retaining Bury South and more of those red wall seats come tumbling down? I think the jury's out on that one, and it's still quite a long journey.
Well, our national reporter is in Bury ahead of the meeting today. He's been hearing pretty mixed reactions from constituents.
If you vote for someone for an MP, you're voting on a manifesto. Yeah. And those people wanted that manifesto.
He's acted on a point of principle for him and made a stand, but he hasn't given the people of Bury South the chance yet to make their stand. So it's time that their voices were heard as well.
You think Boris Johnson should resign?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely, because there's no trust in this country for him anymore. It's all gone. He's lost every bit of trust with everybody.
Now, in other news, 2 men have been arrested in Birmingham and Manchester as part of the investigation into the US Texas synagogue attack. Greater Manchester Police say they remain in custody for questioning. Malik Faisal Akram, who was investigated by MI5 in 2020, was shot dead after a 10-hour standoff with SWAT police after taking 4 people hostage. No one else was injured. Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team have filed a motion for a retrial weeks after she was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. It's after one juror says he failed to disclose before the trial that he was sexually abused as a child and that he described his experience during jury deliberations. Maxwell's lawyer says the disclosures could have convinced other members of the jury to convict her. The British socialite is due to be sentenced in June. The US President Joe Biden says he believes the Russian President Vladimir Putin will move in on Ukraine. Speaking to reporters on the first anniversary of his inauguration, Mr. Biden warned there would be a heavy price if Russia does invade. Around 100,000 Russian troops are on Ukraine's border, and President Putin has made a list of demands to the West. More than 1.2 million people died from antibiotic-resistant infections in 2019, making it a leading cause of death worldwide. That's more deaths in comparison than from AIDS or malaria. New research has found drug resistance in respiratory infections, such as pneumonia, had the greatest impact. People are dying from common, previously treatable infections because the bacteria that cause them have become resistant to treatment. A man's been remanded in custody after being charged with the murder of the Irish teacher, Aisling Murphy. Joseph Puska of County Offaly was heckled as he was taken to a hearing in Tullamore District Court last night. The body of Miss Murphy was found on the banks of the Grand Canal after she'd gone out for a run alone on Wednesday last week. Ministers in Northern Ireland are considering whether to relax COVID restrictions. The Department of Health data shows the region is likely at the peak of the Omicron surge there, but it appears case numbers and hospital admissions are starting to fall. The rules currently include a review of COVID certification entry requirements across a number of hospitality settings. Around 400 store management jobs are set to be lost at Primark as the retailer plans to simplify its management structure. Primark reported a 10% fall in like-for-like sales at the end of last year, attributing to the drop to customers' concern over the spread of Omicron. The British clothing company has promised it will not raise prices for its spring-summer range, despite the pressures of inflation. Andy Murray's been knocked out of the Australian Open. He was beaten in the second round in straight sets by Japan's Taro Daniel. The former British #1 had played a gruelling 5-set match in the opening round. His return to the Australian Open follows major hip surgery in 2019. You are now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys on your radio and TV. We're here until midday, bringing you the top stories of today, discussions with our guests and our own views as well.
Yes, indeed. Now, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has faced yet another blow to his hold on the Conservative Party as one of his own MPs switched sides and announced that they've joined the Labour Party. We'll be joined by former Conservative Minister Michael Portillo to discuss Boris's fate and whether or not there should be a by-election.
Yes, and is the Tory civil war distracting us from the issues that really matter? Many people think they do. Well, we'll be talking to Sam Ashworth-Hayes, Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society, to discuss the bread and butter issues that do matter to you, whether it's struggling NHS or the cost of living crisis.
Yes, I imagine they matter a lot more than parties, don't they? But anyway, we'll be talking to Professor of Public Protection Jane Monckton Smith about new figures which show a worrying rise in domestic abuse throughout the pandemic.
And get in touch with your views as well. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll read as many as we can throughout the show as usual. But first, Patrick gives his views on the real issues facing the nation.
We need to get over Partygate. We need to move on. It's becoming pathetic now. For weeks, our news agenda and political discourse has been dominated by cheese and wine. If it was all quiet on the Western Front, I could understand it. But the reality is that it's not. Far from it. We have a cost of living crisis. Russia may be about to invade Ukraine. There are still grooming gangs operating throughout the UK. There's record illegal immigration in the Channel. The terror threat is severe. There's a knife crime epidemic. I could go on. And yet, all the journalists and politicians can talk about is parties in Downing Street. Yesterday, Sky News interviewed a 4-year-old about whether or not she thought that Boris Johnson was a naughty boy. And mid-interview, she forgot what her parents told her to say. It was toe-curling. I actually couldn't physically watch all of it. Is this the best we've got, is it? While everybody remains obsessed about parties that allegedly took place a year or more ago, there are very real issues facing this country. Important issues, issues that affect us all. Inflation is a bigger issue than cheese and wine. So is illegal immigration. So is the terror threat. I find it absolutely pathetic that while all of this is going on, our entire political energy as a nation appears to be focused on either Boris Johnson trying to keep his job or the opposition trying to force him to resign. Those Red Wall MPs who claim to be so principled that they have to hand in their letters of no confidence in Boris Johnson, frankly, should give their heads a wobble. I'm sure that their constituents care more about how much they are paying for their energy than whether or not Boris Johnson got sloshed in his own back garden with his staff, even if it was illegal. I'm sure they care more about what's happening in the Channel or whether or not their children are safe walking the streets. As long as we're sitting here talking about Boris Johnson's rather squiffy interpretation of the COVID rules, nothing else is getting sorted, is it? Nothing else is getting done. I tell you what, Vladimir Putin must be rubbing his hands with glee. He's potentially about to start World War III. And here in Great Britain, all we can talk about is cheese and wine. Xi Jinping must be over the moon. While he slowly but surely ensures that China takes over the world, we're too busy thinking about whether or not some people in Downing Street got illegally leathered. The fact is, it's easier to focus on a party than it is to actually tackle the major issues facing this country right now. And that's why they're all obsessed with it. In a way, I actually imagine Boris Johnson's quite pleased about this. All he gets asked about now is parties. Nobody's holding his feet to the fire when it comes to this big green agenda, the tax increases, whether or not sending the Navy into the Channel will actually work when it comes to combating illegal immigration. The fact that most politicians and the vast majority of the media think that parties in Downing Street is the most important issue of the day shows just how out of touch they really are.
I do have to say I disagree with you slightly. I do think it matters more than you think it matters, and that's because this does speak to the heart of democracy, because this whole issue is fundamentally about can Boris Johnson firstly be trusted as a Prime Minister, and will he destroy the party's chances of winning another election? I know it's a few years down the line, but because it's about that, because it's about parties, it's about elections, and that's why we saw that defection yesterday, for example.
That
does impact on the wider policy agenda. So, you know, if Boris Johnson is replaced and we do have a new Prime Minister, that could change the course of the Conservative Party, could change the course of the government's policy agenda for, you know, until the next election. So I think it does matter. Much more probably than you think.
I think it does matter, don't get me wrong, I think it does matter, but I think actually at the moment we are facing several crises, as it were. I don't know about crises, certainly massive issues, right?
Yes.
And the fact is we're not spoken about any of them, have we, for at least 2 or 3 weeks now, and I think that's a massive, massive problem, and I think actually, really, when it comes down to it, I know that people do care about this, and I'll hold my hands up, it may well turn out that Boris Johnson has rendered himself completely untenable as Prime Minister. We don't know what's about to come out, do we? That may well happen. He may well have to go. But my point is that whilst we're only talking about cheese and wine and this, that and the other, we've got loads of massive problems facing this country that aren't getting dealt with.
Yes, well, joining us now is Sam Ashworth-Hayes, who's the Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society, a national security think tank, amongst many other things. Thank you for joining us. We've obviously just been having a little conversation there off the back of Patrick's monologue, saying, are we just getting too distracted, far too distracted by what's going on in terms of Downing Street parties and Boris Johnson's premiership? Or does it actually matter? Does it have a substantial impact on some of these other issues that Patrick says we need to focus on again?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I think Patrick raises an interesting point in that it is very easy to get sucked into the sort of the ins and outs of what's going on in Westminster and focus on them almost to the exclusion of some of the more important policy issues, and we see that quite frequently. But in this particular case, I think there is an interesting sort of policy lesson that comes out of it, where you have Boris going up in front of Parliament saying, well, nobody told me this was against the rules. And I think that kind of makes the point that these rules were very complex, and it was really unclear what was a matter of guideline, which is something the government is asking you to do, and what was a matter of law, which is something you were definitely meant not to do. And I suppose for that purpose alone, sort of really digging into what happened and what he got wrong with all of the advice available to him, will at least give you a useful lesson for what not to do next time you write this sort of legislation.
Vladimir Putin must be happy. Xi Jinping must be happy. All we're talking about is cheese and wine. China's on world domination and Russia's about to start World War III.
Well, on the matter of Vladimir Putin, you can, of course, check out the latest Henry Jackson Society report by Dr. Taras Kuzio, which we launched very recently. But yeah, it certainly seems that the Russians are shaping up, at least to make it a serious and credible threat of further action in Ukraine, and that British attention. Well, British attention has actually been sort of focused on the region. We've not been talking about it very much, but we're obviously supplying them with anti-tank systems at the moment. So So we have been doing our bit, but we are not talking about it as much as we should be, perhaps, in the general public. I agree.
The most pressing issue of the day at the moment. We've been talking a lot this week about the cost of living crisis, the cost of energy, which is set to go up in April. Lots of people are also being brought into higher tax brackets in April as well, so people will be paying more tax. What is the biggest issue at the moment? And when we eventually stop talking about Partygate, when Sue Gray releases her report, what should Boris now focus on to win back some of the support that he's lost over the last few weeks?
If Boris wants to win back support by addressing cost of living, the number one place to start, I mean, I'm always going to say this, but I would probably start with the housing cost situation personally. And that means finding a win-win solution for both homeowners who currently have their properties and don't want to see them decrease significantly in value, and people who are trying to get onto the housing ladder. So from that perspective, something like the street votes proposal put forward by Ben Southwood might be worth looking at.
Yeah, look, do you actually think that for most people, for example, in the Red Wall, right, so these seats that miraculously voted Conservative, despite the fact that actually they're more Conservative than Boris Johnson anyway, do you think that they really care about this? Do you not think that they care about the fact that, you know, taxes are going up and then there's illegal immigration, the terror threat is severe? I mean, actually, realistically, is it just a pathetic scandal, really, that most of our media and most of our politicians are solely focused on things like cheese and wine?
No, I think that's a really interesting point you raised about what voters care about, because I suspect they do care about this quite deeply in the fact that they care about fairness. I think British voters have a very strong sense that the rules should be applied fairly and evenly across people, and when they see perceived injustice, and, you know, I think this is why, when you look at the news stories on this, they've been very careful to bring out sort of very upsetting examples of people who were fined quite substantial sums because, you know, they stayed slightly too long to a family member's funeral, or they were lonely and saw a friend in the park. I think it's easy to forget just how harsh these rules were and how sort of how the degree of enforced atomization we saw through it. And now, obviously, I was quite hawkish on COVID, and I think they were probably
sorry to interrupt, but shouldn't we be having that conversation as well? You know, that's the conversation I can get behind. I can absolutely get behind the idea that we should never have had the severity of these rules to begin with. A lot of people will disagree with me on that, and that's fair enough. But we could have that conversation, couldn't we? We could be talking about whether or not these rules should even have been in place in the first place. But instead, we are talking about whether or not Boris Johnson realised it was a party in his own back garden.
I think that's a really good point, and to some extent it's almost acting as a proxy for that conversation whereby we have this, you know, did Boris stick to the rules or not, rather than were the rules so harsh that Boris felt that he couldn't reasonably stick to them, in which case should he therefore be imposing them on the rest of the country. So perhaps that's, you make a good point there, perhaps that's something which should be more broadly addressed.
Yes, indeed. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out. It's a mixed bag in our inbox, it's fair to say. GBViews, GBnews.uk. Some people say, look, actually, it's absolutely not time to forget about Partygate, forget what Boris did. There's no name on that one. But there's loads of people as well who said, we have had enough of Partygate, let the government get on with the more important issues. And yeah, I think that's probably quite an accurate representation of where people are. Some people really do care about this. Some people absolutely do not. But look, thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. It's been great to have you on the show, and we'll have to get you back on again soon, won't we?
Yes, thank you, Sam. David's emailed in saying, Patrick's right about priorities. What will Labour's next question be? Was it cheddar or red Leicestershire? You're right to some extent, but also regardless of whether people want to stop talking about it or not, you've got to admit it's pretty exciting stuff. I mean, it is.
What, the party itself?
Well, no, it's that politics is all about thrill sometimes, isn't it? And it's interesting watching the drama unfold, the psychodrama. So it's still, I'm sure people still want to hear about it secretly and see what happens and see the twists and turns like that defection we'll be talking about later, even if they, you know, say they don't want to.
I do wonder with these MPs as well that, this MP, I should say, who's defected, you know, it's quite a long time conceivably until the next general election, right? I can't help but feel like they've bolted a bit too early here. You know, he's conceivably got years now where he's going to end up being a Labour MP.
Well, he might be forced to step down.
He's going to have a tricky job now, isn't he? Because if someone asks him the question, what is it you stand for, he's got no idea, because we don't know that about Labour,
Yes,
do we?
well, we'll be talking about all of that after the break, that defection of Red Wall MP Christian Wakeford to the Labour Party. Is this a major political win for Starmer? Well, we'll discuss after this.
Hello. It is a sparkling day of winter sunshine out there for the vast majority. It's a little fresh perhaps, but certainly tonight it's going to turn cold with a hard frost forming pretty quickly. Here's the reason why the weather's so settled at the moment. A chunky area of high pressure. But the winds go around the high like that, so they are coming down the North Sea. So it's the east coast that's seeing a fairly brisk and chilly wind, and there are a few showers. Coastal strip of Lincolnshire down into Norfolk in particular, seeing a few showers and a brisk wind. It's quite breezy across the Northern Isles. Any showers here fading away. Some patchy cloud, but for the vast majority it is blue skies and temperatures getting up to 5 to 7 degrees Celsius, touch below average. Certainly feeling cold with that breeze on the east coast, but in the sunshine, as I said, it's a cracking day generally. Quite quickly this evening, though, notice how the blue hue takes hold of the map. A frost forming very quickly this evening. It's going to be a very cold night. Later in the night, cloud will spill into Northern Ireland, Western Scotland and northwest England, which will help to lift the temperatures here. But certainly across much of the south and the east, a frost and a really cold night across the south, one of the coldest of the winter so far. So a hard frost in the south on Friday morning, but then plenty of sunshine here to come on Friday. Another sunny day across the east and with lighter winds. Probably feeling a bit warmer from Yorkshire down to East Anglia. But it will be cloudier further west, and I think we'll keep a lot of cloud through the day for Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland. The odd spot of drizzle over the Highlands, but for the vast majority it's dry. Temperatures maybe a touch higher, but it won't feel as warm with the cloudier skies in the west. It will probably feel a bit milder tomorrow in the east without those winds. The wind's picking up further in the northwest with a bit more patchy rain as we head through Friday night. There are weather fronts which will push in here this weekend, bringing some patchy rain to western Scotland. But for most places, it's dry this weekend with a mixture of cloudy spells and a bit of sunshine.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's 10:23. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News. We're live on your TV and your radio as well.
Yes, now this Parliament was left shocked yesterday as Conservative MP Christian Wakeford, who represents Bury South, announced he was switching sides and joining the Labour Party. Wakeford won the seat in 2019 with a slim majority of 402 and is the first Tory MP to defect to Labour for 15 years.
Yeah, well, the news comes as apparently a major blow anyway for beleaguered Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I imagine he had to check who this guy was, frankly. But he's already been fighting off a group of Red Wall MPs who wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for him. But they're playing, apparently, to force a leadership vote. Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, is actually in Bury. Yesterday he was outside an Aldi. Today he's in Bury. We give him all the best jobs, don't we, this guy? But there we go. He's seeing what the constituents there actually think about this defection.
Right for Christian Wakeford to switch parties, but he needs to have a by-election.
Yeah, he does, because like I said, people have already voted for what he stands for in that party, but now all of a sudden, like I said, he's gone over to another one, and he's switched one and jumped ship for another. How do you know he's not going to jump ship if that doesn't go his way to that one?
Yeah,
that's the problem with that one.
Yeah.
From a Christian point of view, because I think it's got that potential of losing that sort of credibility and that support from both parties, in that, you know, he's gone from one to the other. Can he now be trusted from a Labour point of view? Can he be trusted from sort of jumping ship from one another, and then, you know, from the Conservative of actually, you know, why has he done this? And I think it leaves lots of questions.
He's acted on a point of principle for him and made a stand, but he hasn't given the people of Bury South the chance yet to make their stand. So it's time that their voices were heard as well.
Yeah.
He was right to make a stand, and you know, full marks to him for standing up for what he thinks is right, and for honesty and integrity. But the way in which he's done it, just moving over to another party, doesn't seem like it's the right process, and it feels like, on a matter of principle, it's disenfranchising the people who voted, because they didn't vote for that party and they didn't vote for the policies of that party.
Do you feel sorry for Boris Johnson at all?
Not in the slightest.
No.
Not an ounce of sorry from me.
No.
At all.
Do you mind me asking? Did you vote Conservative at the last election? Did you vote Corbyn?
Never in a month of Sundays.
In terms of the whole Boris thing, I work in education, so he has been the bane of my life.
Right.
Through the whole of COVID, and has caused. It's caused just so much issues. Like I say, there's lots that have gone on, and we're jumping ship. We've got a new decision again today, and that just impacts on so many people. There's no clarity with anything. There's no organisation. It's almost like making these ad hoc decisions as and when, and what one rule for one and one rule for the other.
Do you think you should resign?
Definitely.
Joining us now is Michael Portillo, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury and commentator with over 2 decades of political experience, amongst many other things. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's start off with that defection yesterday. What does it mean? Is it significant at all, or is he just trying to prove a bit of a point?
Well, I think it's significant because I think it has helped Boris Johnson. I mean, there's nothing that most members of Parliament detest more than a defection. I was listening to the radio this morning, and there were 2 people who defected from the Conservative Party, I don't know, 20 and 30 years ago, and I switched off because that's how strongly I feel about it after all these years. I mean, Christian Wakeford is going to have quite an unhappy life, I'm afraid, because, you know, his old colleagues will give him absolutely the cold shoulder. And he's going to find it very difficult working, for instance, with the constituency party in the south of the Labour Party that has spent all this time opposing him.
See, I'm in 2 minds about it. On one hand, you know, my initial reaction is, you know, does the man have no shame? I mean, it's quite shameless, I think, to be honest, to defect to your opponent so, you know, dramatically. I won't take him seriously, I don't think, ever again. But on the other hand, if somebody no longer supports their government, then is it morally right, actually, that maybe they go and publicly say, I don't support you anymore, I'm moving on to somebody else?
I think the weakness in his position is that, you know, it's so recent since he was elected for the first time that he's been consistently voting with the government on quite contentious issues on which the Labour Party has had a very strongly opposed position. So it's really quite difficult, I think, for him to argue that he's been moving towards the Labour Party's positions. Everyone can understand that he's got fed up with Boris Johnson. Lots of members of Parliament have. But what he's done is something very different. And I think he will find it difficult to justify. I don't think you've actually asked me whether I think there should be a by-election. I think ethically...
Should there be a by-election?
Well, I think ethically there should be a by-election. There rarely is. I think it would be an interesting risk for Labour to take, because I think they probably would win the by-election, probably quite handsomely. But it would be very painful within Bury South itself. Can you imagine... you know, all those Labour Party workers going out and knocking on doors for the person that they detested until yesterday morning.
That's a really good point. And actually, he's being used, isn't he? It's no surprise, is it, that presumably he went into the Labour whip's office or whatever and was like, hey, look, I'm considering defending.
But he's being used
They welcome him. Of course they do, but they don't like him, do they?
No, and he is being used ineptly, because I think Boris would be in much more danger this evening today, had that defection not occurred. It has had the effect of unifying the Conservatives. And the second thing that helped Boris yesterday, I'm sure, was David Davis's intervention. I thought he looked pompous and theatrical, self-satisfied. And I thought it also underlined a generational divide, because most of the Red Wall people who are principally involved in this plot are young and they're working class, and they're certainly not deferential. And one of the things that went wrong with the Owen Paterson thing was that this generation of young Conservative Member of Parliament thought Owen Paterson was a dinosaur, a fossil. And they think the same about David Davis. So David Davis has not done anything to help the cause of the rebels. In fact, he's set the cause of the rebels back. I think Boris is in a much better position than he was this time yesterday morning. And in particular, yesterday we thought the report from Sue Gray might come out on Friday. It's now next week. This means another weekend when Conservative MPs go back to their constituencies. I think the mood in the constituency will be a bit different from last weekend, a little bit softer than it was last week.
That's interesting. And when this report finally does come out, because of course that's been the line of the Conservatives, hasn't it? Let's wait till we get this report and then we can discuss what happens from there. When this report comes out, do you think there's anything in it that will be so damaging to the Prime Minister that he will be well, he said he won't resign, will he? But other backbenchers will actually put those letters in and force him to hold that leadership election? Or actually, do you think it would just say what we already know?
In a way, I think both. I think it will say what we already know, but it is possible that a number of backbenchers are waiting to have that confirmed in a report for the moment to put their letters in. In other words, they felt that it might be unjust to put their letters in before the judgment had been made, but they may well feel that once the judgment has been made by a supposedly independent source, that will be the moment to put the letters in. So I think it will say more or less what we expect, and I think it will cause letters to go in. Whether it will be 54, I don't know.
Should these Red Wall MPs actually be careful what they wish for? Because if Boris goes, right, I refuse to believe that they're more likely to keep their seat if Rishi Sunak is in charge. I mean, how does Rishi Sunak play in Dudley North, right? They were voting for Boris, really, weren't they, a lot of this? There's a lot of the working class up north who resonate, bizarrely, considering his upbringing, really, really like Boris, right, in a way that they don't feel about Rishi Sunak. So you get rid of him, you put someone in like Sunak, I don't think they're any more likely to keep their seats, are they?
They were voting for two Bs last time, Boris and Brexit. And if neither one is there, then the election is wide open. It
becomes a Red Wall again.
I think they ought to be very, very cautious about this. I mean, I think it's a very difficult judgment to make. You see, you're trying to work out whether in 2.5 years' time people will remember how angry they feel with Boris now. It's very possible in 2.5 years' time they'll have forgotten exactly what happened, but they may still remember the anger that they felt. In other words, this may have caused them to switch their view about Boris. I think it's a very difficult judgment for Conservatives to make. But there is a risk in the 2019 lot of a certain immaturity, that they're going to make, a pretty snap judgment now about something that really is going to happen in 2.5 years' time. So although this generational divide is very interesting in the Conservative Party, although I rather agree that people like David Davis look like dinosaurs and fossils, on the other hand, the younger generation does look as if it's making some impetuous decisions.
I couldn't agree more, actually. Michael, thank you very much. Great to have you in the studio.
Patrick Mercy, thank you.
Always.
Thank you so much.
Yet again, I will lobby for this. Next time you come in, you have to wear your salmon-coloured trousers. We had it last time, Michael. You've not done it this time. I'm getting very disappointed. Michael Portillo, the legend himself. Thank you very much. Right, after the break, we'll be talking to a professor of public protection to learn how to spot the warning signs of domestic abuse in a relationship. It's getting worse and worse, domestic abuse, at the moment, isn't it? It's escalating, frankly, and coercive control is a massive, massive issue. But before that, let's have a look at this morning.
A very good morning. It is 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright to get you up to date here in the GB News newsroom. MPs have been urged to report any blackmail attempts to the police if they've been pressured for calling on the Prime Minister to resign. The chairman of the Commons Public Administration Committee has told a hearing on parliamentary standards that a number of MPs have faced intimidation from members of the government. William Ragg says it's not a chief whip's function to breach the ministerial code in threatening to withdraw investments from MPs' constituents or threaten to release embarrassing stories to the press. Two men have been arrested in Birmingham and Manchester as part of the investigation into the Texas synagogue attack by British hostage-taker Malik Faisal Akram. Greater Manchester Police say they remain in custody for questioning. Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team have filed a motion for a retrial weeks after she was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. It's after one juror says he failed to disclose before the trial that he was sexually abused as a child and that he described his experience during deliberations. Maxwell's lawyers say the disclosures could have convinced other members of the jury to convict her. The US President Joe Biden says he believes the Russian President Vladimir Putin will move in on Ukraine. Speaking to reporters on the first anniversary of his inauguration, Mr. Biden warned there would be a heavy price if Russia does invade. Around 100,000 Russian troops are on Ukraine's border, and President Putin has made a list of demands to the West. Around 400 store management jobs are set to be lost at Primark as the retailer plans to simplify its management structure. Primark reported a 10% fall in like-for-like sales at the end of last year, attributing the drop to customers' concern over the spread of Omicron. The clothing company has promised it will not raise prices for its spring-summer range, despite the pressures of inflation. You're up to date now. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. I'll keep you up to date throughout the morning. Now, a short break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:37 a.m. and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News, and we're live on your TV and radio this morning.
We are indeed, yes. Now, worrying figures concerning the rise in domestic abuse throughout the course of the pandemic have highlighted the extent of violence against women in the home. But new research from Yves Saint Laurent Beauty UK, who are working with the charity Women's Aid England, shows that nearly half of respondents do not recognise hitting, threats of suicide and isolation from friends and family as red flags, apparently.
Yes, each year around 2 million Brits are subjected to domestic violence, and it remains one of the most common forms of violence against women and girls. And Dr. Jane Monckton-Smith, Professor of Public Protection at University of Gloucestershire and author of In Control, Dangerous Relationships and How They End in Murder, joins us now. Thank you for joining us. Can you just tell us, give us an idea of the figures in relation and the data in relation to domestic violence and people's experience of it during the pandemic, and how that compares to what we knew before?
Well, we already knew that the scale of the issue was startling. So many, and we're talking about women at the moment, so many women, the figures say 33% of women will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. But during the pandemic, it seems that there's been between a 30 and 60% rise in the number of reports that we're receiving, which kind of indicates that the abuse during the pandemic, although the pandemic didn't start new abuse probably, made it worse, made it more intense. So people were coming forward more.
When we were introducing the story there, this research that's been done by Yves Saint Laurent beauty brand and Women's Aid, that shows a lot of women don't actually consider some of the things we know are domestic violence as red flags. Can you just tell us more about this campaign, this Abuse Not Love campaign, and what it's aiming to do?
Well, the campaign is seeking to raise awareness and educate people on what those red flags are that you just talked about, and also to kind of reduce the normalization. I think that sometimes people don't recognize the red flags because abuse within a relationship has become kind of normal. You know, it's almost... I expect this, we expect this. So unless it's really, really bad, you know, we'll tolerate it. So this campaign is going to challenge those assumptions, because the earlier that we can recognize those red flags, the more likely it is that we can keep people safe. Now, I work in the more serious end. I work in homicide, and I know that these things, you know, start in one place and build up to the worst case scenario. So the more that we can learn early, the better.
A lot about red flags, for example, haven't we? What can people do to spot it? Because, you know, often the kind of person, the kind of quite evil, sick individual, for example, who would be a domestic abuser is quite possibly sometimes quite good at hiding it, I would imagine, maybe quite manipulative by definition, maybe borderline psychopathic, I suppose, really. And again, it instills fear, I would imagine, in the victim, and they are quite inclined to cover up for him. So what can we do to spot these things?
Well, there are some, you know, behaviours and behavioural patterns that are always worrying. So I think the one that people don't necessarily recognise as really worrying, and this came out in the Yves Saint Laurent research, is jealousy. Now, as human beings, we all experience jealousy, and I'm not saying that all jealousy is unhealthy, but routine jealousy, somebody who's jealous all the time, somebody who wants you to change things about yourself and justify this by saying it's because they're jealous, that is the kind of entry-level red flag that we all need to be taking notice of. Jealousy, where it's controlling what you do, is always concerning.
What kind of support is available for people out there at the moment? Because we have heard how all sorts of services that were quite crippled actually before the pandemic even began, they've suffered, and I would assume services for women in this position are no different. So what can women expect, and what can they do if they do spot these red flags and they want to get some support? Are the services there for them to help them?
Well, there's a couple of things here. Because intimate partner abuse is usually around trying to stop a partner leaving a relationship. So we need to understand, first of all, that leaving is something that they will be prevented from doing. So they need those services out there to try and help them achieve leaving, because obviously that will be the best thing, you know, if it's a dangerous relationship. The police are much better now at recognising the danger and supporting victims. And there are, in every single area across the country, there are domestic abuse services that will help victims understand their situation, perhaps plan for the future to be able to get out of that situation. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of ways that people can get help now.
OK, Dr Jane Monckton-Smith, thank you very much. Professor of Public Protection at the University of Gloucestershire and, of course, an author in control of dangerous relationships and how they end in murder. Thank you very, very much for your time and highlighting what is obviously a very, very worthy issue and something that we need to keep on top of, because at the moment, as it stands, it's only getting worse. So thank you very much for giving us your time.
Now it's only a couple of weeks until the Winter Olympics and when the UK will come together and cheer on athletes in sports we don't normally see, like bobsleigh.
Sports we don't win.
Yeah, that's probably it. More accurate, really, isn't it? Bobsleigh, figure skating as well, which is very nice to watch.
Very close to my heart. I did figure skating as a child.
Did you actually?
Yeah. What I really wanted to do was play ice hockey, and I grew up in Manchester, so you just can't, right? So figure skating was the closest thing. Between that and the ballet, I hardly had any time for
What do men wear? That explains a lot. What do men usually wear when they're figure skating? Because women wear some kind of leotard / tutu thing, right? What do men wear?
Well, I wore a tutu, but no, I didn't really. No, I just. I wasn't the most professional. I just wore like tracksuit bottoms and everything like that. But yes, I obviously took it very seriously.
Yes, well, on GB News, we've decided to get into the Olympic spirit and have sent our London reporter to have a go at curling. Let's see how she got on.
Well, if you think curling is just for Olympians, then think again. I'm here at the curling club right in the centre of London, would you believe it? And I'm going to have a go at curling, a sport normally reserved for people up in Scotland or Canada or much snowier, chillier parts of the world. But I'm here going to be giving a bit of a go. But I've got some help from Gary Reimer, who's going to be my coach. Thank you very much for joining me here. Right, talk me through, how am I going to get the stone in that? What do we even call that?
So that's the house, and the red dot is called the button. And the aim of the game is to get it close to the button.
Okay.
I find it best if my foot's facing forward, my thumb is facing forward. That will keep me quite accurate. And then I just push front to back.
Oh, he's a bit more welly.
I need a bit more that time.
Okay, all right, I'll give it a go. Now, you're also saying I can sort of swing a bit,
so
is
if you
that
kind
right?
of pick it up and kind of rock it back and forwards a little bit, and then just come down and release it.
Okay, and what happens if I hit your stone?
If my stone hits the side or back, it's out, and if yours hits the side or back, it's out.
Okay.
But you're perfectly fine to whack it.
Okay, I'm trying. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Let's see. Okay, one. Oh, so what does that mean? My stone has hit your stone, but we're not in the house,
so none of us are scoring at the moment. Okay. So we need to get into the house to score.
Okay, we need to go a bit further. All right, you're going then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's too much, Willie.
Oh no, so that's hit the sides. What does that mean?
I'm rubbish.
Okay, time for me to have a go. Okay. So, okay. Oh, well.
Well, you're in the house, so you win that point.
An unusual technique,
Yeah.
probably not meant to go on its side. So what does that mean? Who's winning?
Well, because my stone hit the back, it's out, and yours is in the house now, so that's closest to the button, so you would win this end.
I would win this?
You would win this.
As a total novice?
As a novice, as unconventional a throw as that last one was.
Oh, well, that's very exciting. Well, it's good to know that, listen, I mean, this is obviously a sport that people tend to do, I mean, obviously originated up in Scotland. We don't tend to think of people doing it right in the centre of London, but perhaps me having a go there and winning shows that anyone can have a go at it.
Absolutely anyone can have a go. They'll have a lot of fun if they come down. Yeah.
She won. Alice Porter won.
Which is quite worrying.
Yeah.
He's not very... I don't know how to say that. But, no, I think, my opinion is some sports don't count as sports. Golf is one of them.
Golf? Yeah, golf ruins a good walk.
Going to upset a lot of people.
Yeah. Lots of people
I just
play
don't
golf.
think some sports should count as a sport.
Well, I think it's a strange one because things like squash, for example, is a sport, right? It's tiny tennis. And then, that goes booted out of the Olympics and they introduce things like breakdancing.
Yeah, that's odd,
That's not a
isn't it?
sport,
Because
is
then surely everything, eventually, you can classify sport as pretty much any activity.
I want to see darts in the Olympics, right? So that our standard bearer one year is Phil the Power Taylor, who just comes in with a pint of John Smith's, waving the English flag, load of arrows in his pocket. That's Britain,
I thought you said dance.
No,
darts. Okay.
Yeah, no, darts, definitely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, even that, is it a sport, really?
Not really, but it's good value.
Yeah.
Right, anyway, let's take a quick fire look at some of the other stories doing the rounds today. So scientists say that they've developed a groundbreaking COVID diagnosis test using X-rays.
Yes, the test can give a result within minutes and is 98% accurate. In comparison, a traditional PCR test currently takes about 2 hours to return a result, when scientists are expecting the new method to help medical staff on the front line soon. So great innovation there, and I'm sure lots of things will be innovated, won't they, when it comes to how we learn to live with COVID, because that is now the priority. So I'm sure solutions like this will be popping up a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pill apparently as well that's either here or on the way anyway. And so I think you're right. It's about learning to live with it, isn't it, really?
Yes. And BBC Director General Tim Davie has warned staff about job cuts following the licence fee freeze and plans to end the funding model forever.
So staff are reported to be upset, frustrated and depressed, like most of their audience. A rush licence fee settlement will leave the corporation with a funding shortfall of about £1.5 billion over the next 6 years. Obviously, all joking aside, of course, you don't ever want to see anyone lose their job, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if you've ever done much with the BBC. When I was kind of a bit younger, I was doing a lot of political commentary stuff. It's amazing, really, when you go there. There's someone holding the camera, there's someone watching them hold the camera, there's someone watching them watch them hold the camera, and you think, well, hang on a minute, actually, it's quite bloated, isn't it?
Yeah, you are right. And when I've done things previously with the BBC, I've always been so surprised at their propensity to spend huge amounts of cash for small returns, for like a 5-minute clip or something. So, maybe this might force them to be savvier with the funding that they do have. Potentially.
And now as well, British Airways has cancelled flights to the US over fears that the 5G rollout could impact navigation systems on board. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's a very strange one, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it, I think? That's something about Brewdog there, I imagine we'll come on to shortly. But that's all right, though, to be fair. You can never have enough pictures of a pint on the national news, as far as I'm concerned. Just sweet up.
Well, aside from beer, US mobile networks have gone ahead with the rollout of their 90% of their 5G towers. But airlines, including Emirates, Korean Air and Japan Airlines say they're worried about it and how it will affect their long-haul planes, especially the Boeing 777. This does not have an impact on UK airports because the US uses a different frequency for 5G.
You would have thought this would have come up sooner. Do you know what I mean? You would have thought that at some point this would raise it.
Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, didn't we? About because there was a story we talked about yesterday where something was. Do you know what? Forget it.
It was this story.
It wasn't this story because now I feel like I'm getting totally confused. And we spoke about how whenever they say don't use Wi-Fi, you don't put it on airplane mode. That's what you said.
Yes,
I remember
there's a little
yesterday.
act of rebellion, and when they go, ladies and gentlemen, when they're doing their thing of like your oxygen masks are up here and your nearest exit's here, I'll put my headphones in. I think I just don't need this. If we're going to plumb it down, we're going to plumb it down.
Yes. Well, let's go to some of your views. They might be more coherent than ours. Let's go to Deborah, who says, I think most people are bothered by what's going on in Downing Street. It's the principle of the thing. Deborah says, we lost 3 members of our family and 1 good friend. Whilst Boris and people in Downing Street were boozing up, they need to get rid of him so they can focus on everything else. Because you were making the point that actually we need to stop talking about Partygate, and then that will help us focus on other stuff.
Yeah, and or just stop exclusively talking about Partygate, right? Because there's a lot of other things going on. By the way, very, very sorry and deep sympathies, obviously, for what must have been an incredibly difficult period in your life. So deeper sympathies with that. I'm not trying to diminish that people obviously... Look, people did suffer, people are suffering, people were suffering whilst Boris Johnson essentially was getting boozed up in his back garden with a load of mates. However, right, there are also other issues at play in this country. We have got an energy crisis, cost of living, what on earth are we to do? We can't only get bogged down in this, in my opinion. Anyway.
Yes, well, Angie says... He must be really, he being Boris, he must be really suffering mentally. Boris is the most exciting Prime Minister this country has had, and it's a great shame COVID ruined his chance of what might have been achieved. So Angie is very sympathetic towards Boris and what he's going through at the moment, which is a fair point. He is only human, and there's news coming out today that his baby girl was hit quite badly by COVID. She's only a few weeks old. And so, he's got lots of personal strains in his life as well.
Yeah, undoubtedly, he has. And look, to make it very clear, I suspect there's at least a chance, right? There's at least a chance that something comes out about Boris now, party-wise, that just renders his position untenable. Okay, there is that chance. I personally would rather he stay because you play the tape forward. I don't think we particularly need the kind of upheaval that we would have, but something may come out that means he just has to go, and we have to.
I think the way to force his hand is if I was a political opponent of Boris Johnson right now, and I had I come into some evidence that would further damage his credibility, especially if it relates to lockdown parties, I'd wait until this review or this report has been published by Sue Gray, who's investigating next year, and then I'd publish it. Whatever evidence, because I'm sure this is not the last of it, is it? I'm sure more people have lots of evidence about rule breaking during COVID. And I think more will come out after this particular report is released. And then it's probably at that point that they'll say, this is too much, this can't go on forever. I'm just going to have to...
Well, I don't think he's going to go anywhere anytime soon unless he's absolutely forced to. And I do also think as well, like I said earlier, these Red Wall MPs, not sure they know they're bored. I mean, he's the only reason that the place like Workington, for example, was a Labour seat at every single general election since 1980. How did Theresa May do that? How did David Cameron do that? Well, they lost. How would Rishi Sunak do that? How would Jeremy Hunt do that?
And there's a bigger question as well, I suppose, about a Remainer replacing Boris, because we spoke to Michael Portillo earlier and he said, people voted for the Conservatives for two reasons, Boris and Brexit, especially in those Red Wall seats, many of which were staunchly pro-Brexit. Well, what happens then if somebody who doesn't have the charisma of Boris, which is pretty much everybody else in the Conservative benches, and also is a Remainer? That's a complete gear shift, isn't it?
Yeah, can you imagine being asked to choose between that and Keir Starmer in the next general election? I mean, it's not really inspiring stuff, is it? But anyway,
it's not.
Keep all your thoughts coming into us. Great to hear from you all. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will be back shortly with plenty more of all the topics that you really care about after the break.
Hello. It is a sparkling day of winter sunshine out there for the vast majority. It's a little fresh perhaps, but certainly tonight it's going to turn cold with a hard frost forming pretty quickly. Here's the reason why the weather's so settled at the moment. A chunky area of high pressure. But the winds go around the high like that, so they are coming down the North Sea. So it's the east coast that's seeing a fairly brisk and chilly wind, and there are a few showers. Coastal strip of Lincolnshire down into Norfolk in particular, seeing a few showers and a brisk wind. It's quite breezy across the Northern Isles. Any showers here fading away. Some patchy cloud, but for the vast majority it is blue skies and temperatures getting up to 5 to 7 degrees Celsius, touch below average. Certainly feeling cold with that breeze on the east coast, but in the sunshine, as I said, it's a cracking day generally. Quite quickly this evening, though, notice how the blue hue takes hold of the map. A frost forming very quickly this evening. It's going to be a very cold night. Later in the night, cloud will spill into Northern Ireland, Western Scotland and northwest England, which will help to lift the temperatures here. But certainly across much of the south and the east, a frost and a really cold night across the south, one of the coldest of the winter so far. So a hard frost in the south on Friday morning, but then plenty of sunshine here to come on Friday. Another sunny day across the east with lighter winds. Probably feeling a bit warmer from Yorkshire down to East Anglia. But it will be cloudier further west, and I think we'll keep a lot of cloud through the day for Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland. The odd spot of drizzle over the Highlands, but for the vast majority it's dry. Temperatures maybe a touch higher, but it won't feel as warm with the cloudier skies in the west. We'll probably feel a bit milder tomorrow in the east without those winds. The wind's picking up further in the northwest with a bit more patchy rain as we head through Friday night. There are weather fronts which will push in here this weekend, bringing some patchy rain to western Scotland. But for most places, it's dry this weekend with a mixture of cloudy spells and a bit of sunshine.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki as well. We're on your TV and, of course, we're on your radio. We're here until midday with loads of top topics for you.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll get to those throughout the next hour. But first, it's time for the latest news.
A very good morning. It is 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright to keep you up to date here in the GB News newsroom. MPs have been urged to report any blackmail attempts to the police if they're being pressured after calling on the Prime Minister to resign. The chairman of the Commons Public Administration Committee has told a hearing that a number of MPs have faced intimidation and threats from senior government figures.
It is not their function to breach the ministerial code in threatening to withdraw investments from Members of Parliament's constituencies which are funded from the public purse. Reports to me and others of members of staff at number 10 Downing Street, special advisers, government ministers and others encouraging the publication of stories in the press seeking to embarrass those who they suspect of lacking confidence in the Prime Minister is similarly unacceptable.
The Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is meeting Christian Wakeford in his Bury constituency today after his defection from the Conservative Party to join the opposition. Rachel Reeves says she's happy to have him as a Labour MP and is looking forward to getting to know him. The former Deputy Labour leader, Tom Watson, told GB News the jury's out on who will win the Bury South seat in the next general election.
I guess for the country, it's theatre. I guess in the long run, it shows that Keir Starmer is sort of getting the Labour Party back to the mainstream, is more credible. The real test is at a general election, and will he be able to consolidate that position into retaining Bury South and more of those red wall seats come tumbling down? I think the jury's out on that one, and it's still quite a long journey.
In other news now, 2 men have been arrested in Birmingham and Manchester as part of the investigation into the US-Texas synagogue attack. Greater Manchester Police say the men remain in custody for questioning. Malik Faisal Akram, who was investigated by MI5 in 2020, was shot dead after a 10-hour standoff with SWAT police after taking 4 people hostage. No one else was injured. Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team have filed a motion for a retrial weeks after she was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. It's after one juror says he failed to disclose before the trial that he was sexually abused as a child and that he described his experience during jury deliberations. Maxwell's lawyers say the disclosures could have convinced other members of the jury to convict her. The British socialite is due to be sentenced in June. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said the EU will respond with massive economic and financial sanctions if there are further attacks from Russia on Ukraine. It comes as US President Joe Biden says he believes the Russian president will move in on the nation and warns Russia will pay a heavy price if it invades. President Putin has made a list of demands to the West as around 100,000 Russian troops are on Ukraine's border. More than 1.2 million people died from antibiotic-resistant infections in 2019, making it a leading cause of death worldwide. That's more deaths if we compare it than from AIDS or malaria. New research has found drug resistance in respiratory infections, such as pneumonia, had the greatest impact. Well, people are dying from common, previously treatable infections because the bacteria that cause them have become resistant to treatment. A man's been remanded in custody after being charged with the murder of the Irish schoolteacher Aisling Murphy. Joseph Puska of County Offaly was heckled as he was taken to a hearing in Tullamore District Court last night. The body of Miss Murphy was found on the banks of the Grand Canal after she'd gone out for a run alone on Wednesday last week. Around 400 store management jobs are set to be lost at Primark as the retailer plans to simplify its management structure. Primark reported a 10% fall in like-for-like sales at the end of last year, attributing the drop to customers' concern over the spread of Omicron. The British clothing company has promised it will not raise prices for its spring-summer range, despite the pressures of inflation. Andy Murray says he's disappointed and frustrated after being knocked out of the Australian Open. He was beaten in the second round in straight sets by Japan's Taro Daniel. The former British #1 had played a gruelling 5-set match in the opening round. His return to the Australian Open follows major hip surgery that he had in 2019. You are now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you the latest as it happens. Now let's return to the point.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki. We're on your TV and we're on your radio as well, so there's no excuse not taking us everywhere we go. We've got a big final hour coming up for you, actually, so here's what's coming up.
Yes, indeed. The National Crime Agency is hunting fugitives in Spain, and our Home and Security Editor Mark White will be reporting on the UK Crime Prevention Agency's fight against the 12 most wanted fugitives.
Yes, it's not called the Costa del Crime for no reason whatsoever, is it? But also on the show, as tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine, we'll be talking to the independent columnist on foreign affairs, Mary Dejevsky, on what a Russian invasion would actually mean for Britain.
Plus, have you been attempting dry January this year? Have you been doing dry? No. If you have, today is apparently the day you're most likely to give up anyway. Well, we'll be discussing why this is with experimental psychologist Charles Spence very shortly.
There we go. Well, we have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. And, of course, you can get in touch with your views as usual. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on poor quality universities being penalised.
England's universities regulator has said it will start sanctioning universities who offer poor quality courses as well as college courses as well. The Office for Students says it's going to take a more robust approach by fining and withdrawing funding from institutions that don't meet the thresholds for things such as student dropouts and graduate employment rates. For instance, unis and colleges could be sanctioned if more than 20% of its students drop out after the first year, or if fewer than 60% of its graduates go on to work in skilled employment. Now, according to estimates, more than 60,000 full-time and 150,000 part-time students are currently studying at English universities which would not meet these sorts of thresholds. And my view is this is absolutely right and actually completely overdue. £20 billion of taxpayers' money is loaned to students each year in England. The value of outstanding loans is currently £160 billion. And according to the government's own calculations, students will owe over £500 billion, yes, trillion, pounds to the government by the middle of this century. And to make it worse, the government expects that 75% of current full-time students will never even repay those loans in full. So in theory, the taxpayer ends up footing at least some of the bill for 3/4 of students who go to university, with only a quarter ending up actually fully funding it on their own. So given that that's the way things are currently set up, I think the taxpayer has every right to demand that when public money is loaned out to students, it's delivering value for money. That students aren't graduating with third-rate degrees and going into jobs they'll never make a proper earning out of. And it's also completely right that students be discouraged from going to universities which offer these poor quality courses, which are often completely pointless. I looked at the outstanding balance on my own student loan just this morning, I've already repaid about 10 grand's worth since I graduated, but even then, as of this morning, I still owe a total of £69,337. What kind of sadistic lunatic would burden themselves with that kind of debt for some bogus low-grade degree they'll probably never make any use out of at some second-rate university? It's madness. Poor quality courses benefit no one, and it's high time universities were penalised for ripping off students and ripping off the taxpayer.
You're skimp, mate. 69 grand? What did you study? Everything?
I owe 69 grand. I owe about
69 grand?
Yeah, I owe about 58 grand currently for my undergraduate loans that I took out.
It's genuinely brought a tear to my eye, that.
And then I owe about, I don't know, 11 grand for my postgraduate loan. And obviously that includes the interest they, have added.
Buy a house in Hull for that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but that's exactly my point. I probably will, over my lifetime, pay that off. As I mentioned there, well, the government says that they expect 75% of current students to never actually pay their loans off in full. So
of course
it's perfectly right that the taxpayer should get value for money for shelling out on all these students who will probably never even pay.
The amount of times you go, oh, what did you do? I studied fine art at Leeds Beckett University. What do you do now? Recruitment. Nice.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the kinds of jobs people go into.
Yeah, I'm not belittling the job. What I am saying is there was no need to study fine art at Leeds Beckett University.
Yeah, people more often than not, I would say, the people I know who went to university, they're now in fields which have nothing to do with the job they studied at all, with the course they studied.
Exactly. I actually studied being a loudmouth, and so actually I've fallen straight into place. So,
What did you actually study at university?
Politics.
Same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't really turn up for any of it, but I technically did politics, yes. So, and also I did a law degree during lockdown,
You did.
Which is a terrifying thought, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? You commit a crime, I turn up to represent you in court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning on using that anytime in the near future?
And actually, I realised earlier this time, I imagine if our parents are watching now, will come as bad news, so they might as well tell you in front of the nation. Forgot to book tickets to my graduation, so we keep it going, lads. Right, OK, Parliament was left shocked yesterday as Conservative MP Christian Wakeford, who represents Bury South, announced he was switching sides and joining the Labour Party. So Wakeford won the seat in 2019 with a slim 402 vote majority, and is the first Tory MP to defect to Labour for 15 years.
Yes, well, the news comes as a major blow to the beleaguered Prime Minister, who has already been fighting off a group of Red Wall MPs who are reportedly planning to force a leadership vote. Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, about this. Tom, a lot of people are saying if he's defected, the ethical thing to do is have a by-election. I think Christian Wakeford is actually speaking now.
By the way, Tom's been sat here for about 15 minutes. He's not got to say a word.
Christian Wakeford is speaking now, so we can actually go to him.
Apparently. Are we? Wakeford? To be fair, that's probably about as much value as you get out of Wakeford, isn't it?
Well,
so we'll just go to Tom instead. I mean, he is here.
Let's go to Tom. Tom, lots of people are saying the ethical thing to do, the moral thing to do, even if it's not what he has to do, is to have a by-election.
Well, let me preface this by saying if we can get what Christian Wakeford is saying.
Wakeford's about now. Tom, shut up. Right, Wakeford.
New Britain based on security, prosperity and respect. So to introduce Rachel Reeves, I'm very pleased to welcome our Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Burnham.
Tom, as you were.
Well, we got to hear just a few words there from Christian Wakefield. What an interesting time in politics this is. It's interesting, actually, this event that's going on in Greater Manchester today with some of the Labour bigwigs. Apparently, Christian Wakefield will not be fielding questions, so they're really hugging him quite tight, keeping him quite close. Although, Mercy, to your question that before we were rudely interrupted by that Labour Party event, it does seem strange. There are two schools of thought here. Number one, the Labour Party is well ahead in the polls right now. If they were to call a by-election, they would probably win it. Aside from all the local factors, people might be annoyed about being forced to vote again. They may not do as well as they do in a generic seat of that kind, but Labour would probably take the seat. Of course, Christian Wakefield won it by just 402 votes at the last election. However, there is one point of contention here that the Labour Party might not want to push forward, and that is pushing forward the precedent of having by-elections for these kind of defections. If the Labour Party want to coax any more Tory MPs to defect, it will be a very hard thing to do if they think they'll have to fight a by-election at that point of doing it. Now, if we think back to to 2014, when there was that famous defection of Douglas Carswell, the then Conservative, then UKIP MP for Clacton, a man who believes in direct democracy, a huge believer in not only Brexit, but in all of that flows from that, so the democratic principles of that. Now, he bravely called a by-election and on an astonishing swing, one of the biggest swings in the history of the country, won that by-election. He was followed by Mark Reckless, another Conservative MP. Rochester and Stroud resigned from the Conservatives, joined UKIP, called a by-election to legitimise that defection. He also won it. But then we entered the era of all of those anti-Brexit MPs, those anti-democracy MPs, some might say.
Change.org.
The Change UK MPs. Change.org, the petition sites, actually tried to sue Change UK for that confusion. But none of those MPs called a by-election, and so created or put a stop to that precedent. And I think that what really is behind the lack of a by-election here is the Labour Party really hope they might get some more defectors, and they don't want to put them off with the thought that they might have to face their election.
The previous defections, for the last few defections from the Conservatives to the Labour Party, I believe happened when Labour was in power. And this is the first one to happen, of course, when the Conservatives are in power to Labour.
This is the first since 1995. So you have to go back. Really, really quite far.
What
How
does
many
it say?
years
What
ago
does
is
it say, though?
1995? Before I was born is 1995. Before I was
born that year.
Was the last time.
But what does it
there
say
was
that
government
I've never
to
felt
opposition defection?
And is that significant for Boris Johnson at all?
Well, it's significant in two ways. Number one, Keir Starmer was crowing at Prime Minister's questions that the Labour Party has changed. Now, Christian Wakefield is someone who has stood very strongly against anti-Semitism, was a huge critic of Jeremy Corbyn. And to that extent, the Labour Party is trying to express that this is a different party than that was led by Jeremy Corbyn. And in the same breath, Keir Starmer saying that the Conservative Party has changed, has got out of touch. However, the flip side of that is, of course, the conversation changed. The heat was lifted from Boris Johnson during Prime Minister's questions, and Boris Johnson was probably given another week, whereas he was in a very difficult position before that defection happened.
Can we just ask a couple of pertinent questions really about Mr. Wakefield? I mean, so he's a lifelong Conservative, presumably, probably was, a Conservative for a great number of years, and then all of a sudden he's a Labour MP. I don't understand how you can do that. Has this guy got a moral compass? Also, is he being used as a kind of useful idiot here? I mean, of course Labour welcome him in. Of course they go, oh, yeah, come on, we've been waiting for you to cross the floor. They're just using him, aren't they?
Well, interestingly, speaking to some of the senior people in the Labour Party who were briefing journalists on this yesterday, they wouldn't commit to saying that Christian Wakefield will be the Labour candidate at the next general election. There's a process that needs to go through. And interestingly, his constituency Labour Party is meeting tonight. And that party, that local party and the local councillors of that party are people that he has criticised for years and years and years. It will be a fractious relationship.
Yeah, I can imagine, if I don't know what his personal circumstances are, if he's got a partner or something, he goes home and he's like, oh, defected today, out of a job now. And he's like, you were on £80,000 a year.
Well, I think to some extent...
I've just been told apparently he didn't even tell his staff.
He didn't tell his staff, no. He didn't Actually, I was having a couple of drinks with some Conservative MPs, some new Conservative MPs last night, who were shocked because they were having drinks with him on Monday. The start of this week. These are people who counted themselves as very close friends of Christian Wakefield. One of whom actually was crying when they found out.
Wow.
One of those close friends of him, a Conservative MP, was crying when they found out. Some of them actually left the drinks last night just outside Parliament to go to one of the offices, I was told, to console each other over this, because this was really quite a shock to them. And I think they feel that he's been really quite duplicitous.
And just finally, can you talk us through, because a lot of when people are analysing this situation, they're saying, well, it's because he's seeing Labour's ahead in the polls, they have a good chance of winning next time. But would he actually have to be the Labour candidate if a by-election was held? He wouldn't necessarily be the candidate for Labour either, would he?
There are different rules when it comes to by-elections. The Central Party has a lot more control over selecting candidates. And if we remember back to the Hartlepool by-election, one that Labour actually lost, that was a candidate that was imposed upon the party by the Central Labour Party, someone who seemed a bit out of whack with the seat. It was a big Remainer, sort of all of these things. It didn't seem like that good an idea, and actually the local party was a bit miffed with the Central Party for that imposition. However, there's a different process when it comes to selecting a candidate for a general election, and that process will have to be gone through in order for Christian Wakefield to be selected, and that could be a bit of a tricky road.
Tom Harwood, it was worth you sitting there for 15 minutes before we came to you. Thank you very much. Tom Harwood there, of course, our expert political correspondent. Now, after the break, we will be hearing from our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, and there's some more of Tom there for you. And, of course, he's over there now to discuss the fact that 12 UK fugitives believed to be hiding in Spain. So we're going to do that, but first, the weather. Or not. I could do the weather. I imagine it's probably a bit drizzly up north, and then down south it gets slightly brighter. Oh, goodness gracious me, when you go to Scotland, let me tell you what, it's absolutely hammering down out there. But when we go to Wales, and actually they're all locked down, so they can't tell what the weather's like anyway. And don't get me started on Ireland.
Hello. It is a sparkling day of winter sunshine out there for the vast majority. It's a little fresh perhaps, but certainly tonight it's going to turn cold with a hard frost forming pretty quickly. Here's the reason why the weather's so settled at the moment. A chunky area of high pressure. But the winds go around the high like that, so they are coming down the North Sea. So it's the east coast that's seeing a fairly brisk and chilly wind, and there are a few showers. Coastal strip of Lincolnshire down into Norfolk in particular, seeing a few showers and a brisk wind. It's quite breezy across the Northern Isles. Any showers here fading away. Some patchy cloud, but for the vast majority it is blue skies, and temperatures getting up to 5 to 7 degrees Celsius, touch below average. Certainly feeling cold with that breeze on the east coast, but in the sunshine, as I said, it's a cracking day generally. Quite quickly this evening, though, notice how the blue hue takes hold of the map. A frost forming very quickly this evening. It's going to be a very cold night. Later in the night, cloud will spill into Northern Ireland, Western Scotland and northwest England, which will help to lift the temperatures here. But certainly across much of the south and the east, a frost and a really cold night across the south, one of the coldest of the winter so far. So a hard frost in the south on Friday morning, but then plenty of sunshine here to come on Friday. Another sunny day across the east, and with lighter winds, probably feeling a bit warmer from Yorkshire down to East Anglia. But it will be cloudier further west, and I think we'll keep a lot of cloud through the day for Wales, northwest England, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland. The odd spot of drizzle over the Highlands, but for the vast majority it's dry. Temperatures maybe a touch higher, but it won't feel as warm with the cloudier skies in the west. It will probably feel a bit milder tomorrow in the east without those winds. The wind's picking up further in the northwest with a bit more patchy rain as we head through Friday night. There are weather fronts which will push in here this weekend, bringing some patchy rain to western Scotland. But for most places, it's dry this weekend with a mixture of cloudy spells and a bit of sunshine.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good morning, it's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys here on GB News, and we're live this morning on your TV and radio.
Yes, now UK crime-fighting groups have travelled to the Spanish capital of Madrid to track down the 12 most wanted UK fugitives. So the National Crime Agency, there they are, and crime-fighting charity Crime Stoppers are launching a multinational campaign to find these offenders, all of whom have connections with Spain and the Canary Islands.
Yes, well, the dozen men on the run are wanted for crimes including murder, drugs and weapons trafficking. And our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, has the story.
It was the most shocking of gangland murders. Gunmen opening fire in broad daylight, targeting a fellow drug dealer and caring nothing for the innocent children playing nearby. 4 years after this murder in Greater Manchester, a key suspect, Callum Halpin, is now believed to be hiding out in Spain. He's been added to the National Crime Agency's list of their 12 most wanted fugitives who've fled to Spain and its holiday islands. In Spain's capital, British law enforcement officials joined their Spanish counterparts at the launch of a campaign to track them down.
Each and every campaign that we've done, and I was involved in the last campaign 5 years ago, has been successful. And again, it's not just the sheer volume of the calls that we get, it's the quality of the information that's important. Because if we just get 3 or 4 key bits of information that leads to a rapist or a murderer or a serious drug dealer being picked up, arrested and brought back home to face justice, then that's got to be a good thing.
The UK's National Crime Agency says British criminals are sadly mistaken if they believe they can escape to European countries post-Brexit. Partnerships with the likes of Spain have ensured law enforcement agencies in both countries still have a close working relationship.
The processes for sharing information are slightly different, but the impact is just the same. We have a great relationship with the Spanish authorities. The new measures that came in post the EU exit are working well here in Spain. And the proof of that is that last year 25 people were arrested and returned back to the UK.
2 years ago, this quiet road in Roydon in Essex was sealed off as police dealt with the aftermath of a fatal drive-by shooting. A 50-year-old man was shot 8 times in what's believed to have been a dispute between criminal gangs. The key suspect, Nana Opong, is another who's now understood to be in Spain, trying to evade UK authorities. The National Crime Agencies say that their 12 most wanted fugitives will by now have tried to integrate into British expat communities across Spain. And many will have returned to criminal activities. So it's up to Brits abroad, say the NCA, to try to identify the criminals among them. James Stevenson is a prolific drug trafficker who's also known to carry weapons. He's wanted most recently in relation to the attempted importation of more than a tonne of cocaine. The 12 most wanted fugitives are among the UK's most dangerous criminals, just as big a menace to Spain as they are to the UK. And so it's hoped people here will pass on anything they know that could finally bring these men to justice. Mark White, GB News, Madrid.
Yes, absolutely. Well, joining us now is Peter Kirkham, former Detective Chief Inspector with the Metropolitan Police. Welcome to the programme, Peter. Thank you very much. Look, from where I'm sitting, right, I've thought this for quite a while, it does look a little bit like you can commit a crime in this country and then just go and live in Spain and very little happens to you. Is that unfair?
It's not difficult if somebody's outside our jurisdiction to find them and to bring them to justice, but it's not impossible. But it obviously adds a sort of degree of difficulty and slows things down quite considerably. But no, the police in this country have long had good relationships with Spain because that seems to be a favoured destination for those on.
I've always wondered how they actually managed to get out of the country. Presumably they commit... Because...
I think many of them get out before they're found to be...
Oh, yeah, it's straight away. But then it does beg the question, why commit your crime? So, for example, a couple of those people there were drug dealers, right?
Yes.
So one of the ones that was the shooting, you would imagine that was some kind of turf-related issue, right? But if you know that if you just shoot this guy and then you're going to have to leg it to Spain, why do it? You're not going to be...
You're asking the wrong...
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what I thought. I need answers.
I'm not going to lie to you.
Anyway.
Well, look, something we teased a bit earlier, but we couldn't get to. Tory defector, who we've been talking about all morning, Christian Wakeford, who switched from Conservatives to Labour yesterday. He was at a Labour event, his first Labour outing, a bit earlier, and here's what he said.
Well, it's been an interesting week, I think. I don't know about you, but I think I could do with some more sleep. I'd note, however, moving on to the agenda, we do have a shared agenda and about how we can build a better Bury for all those who need it the most. And it's a great honour, if not a surprise, to be here today. Yesterday, I said that Britain needs a government focused on tackling the cost of living crisis and providing a path out of a global pandemic. That path needs to protect living standards. It needs to defend security for all. That's why I joined the Labour Party. Because only Labour are coming up with the solutions. The Conservative Party aren't even talking about the problem, let alone offering solutions. And here on the front bench right now, we have someone not only talking, but offering a fully costed solution. And we're all looking forward to hearing more from you, Rachel. Families, businesses and pensions here in Bury and across the country really need leadership. With Keir Starmer, we are getting real, proper leadership with integrity and respect. The Labour Party is firmly back in the centre of British politics. It's in touch with working people and ready to provide an alternative government that this country can be proud of and deserves. And certainly not to be embarrassed by, and that is one of the reasons why I'm here today. I will always put the people of Bury South first, and I look forward to working with Andy, Eamon and Labour colleagues locally and nationally to achieve the needs of this area. Change that I believe can be best delivered with a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. Since becoming Shadow Chancellor, Rachel has shown Labour is the party of economic competence once again. I know Labour's plan for growth and a stronger economy is what we need here in Bury and across the country to build a new Britain based on security, prosperity and respect.
That was the most boring thing I've ever watched. How uninspiring was that?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the Conservative Party haven't lost much out of that.
What was that? Oh, sorry. Anyway, I just don't understand. I mean, he's the only person who's... I mean, he's I don't know, he's managed to suck the life out of that, hasn't he, really?
Yes, well, after the break, we'll be speaking to a foreign affairs columnist about the growing tension between Ukraine and Russia. Where will it all end? But before that, a look at this morning's news.
It's 11:33. Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date with the latest news. Now, MPs have been urged to report any blackmail attempts to the police if they've been pressured by the government for calling on the Prime Minister to resign. A senior Conservative MP, William Ragg, accused the government of intimidating MPs who tried to remove Boris Johnson. Downing Street say they are not aware of any evidence to support what are clearly serious allegations about lawmaker intimidation. The Bury South MP, who defected from the Conservatives to the opposition, says Labour will give the country the leadership it deserves, not one they are embarrassed by. Christian Wakeford was speaking in his constituency, where Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is currently delivering a speech on Labour's plan for the economy. Rachel Reeves says she's happy to have him as a Labour MP and is looking forward to getting to know him. 2 men have been arrested in Birmingham and Manchester as part of the investigation into the Texas synagogue attack by British hostage-taker Malik Faisal Akram. Greater Manchester Police say they remain in custody for questioning. Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team have filed a motion for a retrial weeks after she was found guilty of grooming underage girls to be sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. It's after one juror says he failed to disclose before the trial that he was sexually abused as a child and that he described his experience during deliberations. Maxwell's lawyer says the disclosures could have convinced other members of the jury to convict her. Emma Raducanu is out of the Australian Open after being beaten in the second round. The US Open champion lost to Danka Kovic, who becomes the first player from Montenegro to reach the third round of a Grand Slam. Her defeat comes after Andy Murray was knocked out in straight sets by Japan's Taro Daniel. The 3-time Grand Slam champion says he's disappointed and frustrated. You are now up to date here on GB News, but on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. I've got more for you across the morning. A short break and then back to the briefing.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 11:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki. We're here on GB News. We're live on your TV and indeed your radio.
Yes, well, earlier we spoke about the fugitives that the National Crime Agency are trying to hunt down in Spain. And now we're going to speak to Peter Kirkham, who's a former Detective Chief Inspector with the Metropolitan Police, about this issue. Welcome to the programme. Patrick had asked you a bit earlier that it seems that Spain seems to be a safe haven for people who commit crime, because that's where they all seem to go.
I don't think it's the fact that it's a safe haven that attracts them. It's the fact that it's Spain, and that is somewhere that is well known to most Brits, places they've been on holiday, and maybe even where they've got relatives already settled and some sort of infrastructure there. Plus, you've got as many English pubs as you can shake a stick at, and so all the...
Well, there we go. Unfortunately, it's not to be for Peter Kirkham.
Alas.
Some days, it's just not your day, is it? Either that or the lights have just gone off. Maybe there's been a power cut. That might be it. He's probably still there, actually. It's just his wife's walked in and turned the lights off. Anyway, right, moving on. US President Joe Biden said he thinks his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin will move in on Ukraine, but does not want a full-blown war. He also said that Mr. Putin would pay a serious and dear price for invading, but indicated a minor incursion might be treated differently.
Well, joining us now is Mary Dejavsky, Foreign Affairs columnist for The Independent. Good morning. What did you make of Joe Biden's comments yesterday? Because he's been harshly criticised by people all over the world for them.
Well, I think it was quite a strange thing to say. I mean, I think if you're President of the United States, to suggest that somebody else, in particular Russia, it might be okay if they did a sort of small incursion, but not if they had an outright war. I mean, it doesn't sound a very advisable thing to say. So I can quite imagine that people are quite worried about this.
Joe Biden has not been particularly great when it comes to foreign policy. You know, Afghanistan being quite a large example, an ongoing example, and this as well. Is he a bit inept, do you think?
Well, I mean, I would actually defend the withdrawal from Afghanistan because I think that, yes, the way it was done looked chaotic, but it's quite hard to see how else it would have actually resulted. And I think that the overall result of a withdrawal, not just of the United States, but of foreign troops generally from Afghanistan, that is actually a positive thing to do. One of the things that I think is maybe less seen about President Biden is that, you know, his age places him very much in the mould of old-style Cold Warriors. And I think we see some of that background in the way that he treats Russia, the way he treats Europe generally. And he maybe looks back to a time of, you know, détente in the 70s and 80s with Soviet Russia. And his framework for looking at that part of the world is maybe not quite how it is nowadays.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, really, how do we de-escalate this? Is there any de-escalation that could take place? Because maybe this is actually what Biden's trying to do. You know, he's just kind of saying, well, look, hey, you know, a minor incursion, that won't matter. But I was just thinking about this. You know, if Joe Biden has said that about this country, or indeed any country, you said it, you know, wherever you are in the world now watching this, if the President of the United States of America essentially said, I don't mind Russia having a little bit of your country, it's not great, is it?
No, I mean, this is absolutely the whole objection to it, and why it was, in a way, such an extraordinary thing to say. And I'm not sure that it's quite the aspect of de-escalation that anybody's really looking for. I mean, my view of what's going on between Russia, Ukraine, and United States, Russia, Ukraine, is that what's happening at the moment, it is very, very dangerous situation because both sides, but especially, it seems to me, the United States and the UK are talking up the prospects of war, of a real war breaking out with Russia apparently, as the West would say, preparing to invade Ukraine. Every day, practically, we get an escalation of this version, some new observation, whether it's Joe Biden saying he thinks, well, some sort of incursion is inevitable, whether it's, we had the UK Defence Secretary a couple of days ago publishing an article where he argued with what he said was Putin's view of Ukraine. We've had the British supplying new weapons to Ukraine, which was hugely publicised. You know, we saw the planes setting off. We were treated to the PR video of what these weapons could do. I just think that the way this is featuring in the news, in our news, in the American news, this is not a recipe for de-escalating, and I think it's a really, really dangerous situation.
Well, Mary Dejavsky, thank you so much for that expert analysis, their foreign affairs columnist for The Independent.
Yes, we'll definitely have to get back on. I mean, it's not going away anytime soon, is it? And I mean, clearly, got a depth of knowledge about that particular issue.
If Donald Trump had made a gaffe like this, he would be getting dragged left, right, and centre much more. But this has happened to Joe Biden as well. But he would be getting far more.
I do think Putin now. Putin's a strong man. I mean, we saw him topless on a horse there, for goodness sake, for a while for some reason. And he's a strong man, isn't he? He's an old school dictator. He doesn't wear a shirt when he's going horse riding, for example, and that much is obvious. But on top of that, though, I think he respects other strong men, right? And that's kind of tends to be the kind of like brain type of these people, right? And he looks at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's just said, well, you can have a bit of Ukraine. It's not exactly, all right, then I'll have all of it. I don't understand why. I don't understand why.
Massive.
Donald Trump would have threatened to blow him up, wouldn't he? Like he did with North Korea when he was like, what was it? How good they'll be met with fire and fury. Like, no,
Yeah.
Well, they didn't launch a nuke, did they?
Well, that's true. But now, to end the show, it's January the 20th. How's your dry January been, if you've attempted it?
Been very wet,
research shows that today is most likely the day people actually give up on their attempt to go alcohol-free. We were talking about this earlier, weren't we? You absolutely haven't tried.
Well, I'm not a quitter.
Have you ever tried dry January?
I don't think I've tried dry. I don't know. I don't think so. But I don't want to.
Yeah,
So there's that.
Yeah, I do want to drink less.
Miserable
but
January.
Dry January. I mean, why January?
Well, my birthday's in the middle of January, right? So.
Dry January would definitely be a bad idea.
That's not happening. You can't have a sober birthday. Goodness gracious me, what's the world coming to? But yes, no, I'm not doing dry January. No, I think I've established that now.
Well, let's talk to a psychologist to see why exactly.
Is this an intervention?
Why exactly? It is. 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks into January, isn't it? That might be why people give up after 3 weeks. But Dr. Charles Spence, who's an experimental psychologist and flavour expert, which you'll have to explain to me, at Oxford University, joins us now. Good morning. So talk to us. Talk about.
I'll have a go. Go on, use your words.
Talk about this study that says January the 20th is the most likely day to actually quit dry January for those people who are doing it.
So, according to a new survey from CleanCo of 2,000 Brits, it turns out today is the day in the year for those who are trying to engage in dry January when most people give up. Why it should be today is probably because when you try and give up, according to the survey, many people just don't go out at all. They realise that if they mix with friends, if they find themselves in a bar or a pub, then their resolve goes, and so they kind of lock themselves away, avoid temptation, and that can make it that much harder to stay with one's desire not to drink.
Yeah, indeed. And if people are looking to stop something, it can be quite easy to end up actually obsessing about that thing that you're not doing, can't it? You constantly think about, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. What kind of advice would you have for people like that, then?
Well, one thing is to think, we don't often drink because we're thirsty necessarily, but drinking together can play a very important social role. And so for those 8.4 million Brits who are locking themselves away, trying to avoid temptation, one might need to think about how you replace that sort of social element. Maybe it's going out to the movies with people or to a restaurant, somewhere where you can socialise, but without the drinks being a major trigger for you. The other thing is to think, if you are, as so many of us have been locked away in the home environment for so long, then to take away all of the paraphernalia of drinks. Because as soon as you see a drink, that can also trigger your mind to think, oh, maybe I'll have one after. And the thing that really helps me is to think that our desire for a drink isn't the same all day long, from first thing in the morning to last at night. But in fact, maybe it's cocktail hour for me between 6 and 7 is when I'm most tempted to take a drink. And if you get during that time, you can figure out what time of day it is for you when you feel most tempted. Try and do something distracting. For me, it's going to the gym or going for a swim. If you can get past that hour, then the rest of the day it's much easier to keep going with one's restraint.
You mentioned that replacing activities that you would usually do with drink with activities that don't necessarily need drink. I'm interested in this idea of sort of alcohol-free alcohol replacements. And I just wonder, because we mentioned you're a flavour expert, so you're an expert in sorts of how people experience the world, taste, smells, that kind of thing. Do you think alcohol can be replicated? The experience of drinking alcohol, which obviously millions of us enjoy, can that really be replicated without alcohol?
No.
I'd say yes, as a flavour expert. I think if you go back a couple of years, then very often the replacement for a drink was, if you're somebody like me who loves their gin and tonic, would be a glass of soda with a slice of lemon and some ice in the same glass you'd normally have a drink in. So you can kind of engage in the ritual of drinking. But it just wasn't the same from a flavour perspective. It didn't taste the same. It didn't have the same mouthfeel, the same aroma. And that's where some of these sort of premium non-alcoholic spirits, like Clean Co ones, are coming in, because they've been working really hard to develop a flavour profile that really matches and is, in some cases, indistinguishable from the alcoholic version it has. Say the Clean G, the gin replacer, has all the botanicals, has a really rich and complex aroma profile. It's got a complex taste too, but quichely, the thing it's got is this kind of mouth coating sensation that you get with alcohol, something that sort of lingers on the palate. And so they've been able to, replace all of these flavour sensations in a non-calorific, non-alcoholic version, which does allow people, I think, to keep with the ritual they'd normally have, but without consuming alcohol.
Well, it's a massive market, isn't it? It's one of the, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is it's one of the fastest growing drinks markets, is the non-alcoholic drinks market. But you have to just tell me a bit about yourself here. How do you become a flavour expert?
We have to eat a lot.
You get a degree in flavour.
In the psychology of flavour, yes, because, what we think we're tasting isn't just about what goes on the tongue. It's also about what things look like and the way they smell, and it comes together with our emotion, our mood, and all of that happens in your brain. And hence why, as a psychologist, I'm really interested in flavour and gastrophysics.
I think it's an incredible talent. Now, genuinely, all joking aside, like sommeliers and things like that. I mean, I don't have the palate for it.
Is it actually just pretentious people? Because I always wonder when people when people do wine tasting and things like that, and they're swirling around the wine and they say they taste hints of whatnot. Are they just being pretentious, or do you think some people actually do have a strong nose for particular flavours?
So we have tested the wine experts when we can get hold of them, compared them just to regular drinkers like Q or I. And it turns out that they can't smell things that the rest of us can't smell. We've got the sort of similar ability to detect things, but what the flavour expert, or the wine expert in particular, can do is they can put a name to that smell. The rest of us were saying, well, I can smell something, it's kind of fruity, I like it, but what is it? I don't know. And they'll say it's cat's piss, or it's, if they're Ross Clark, or it's, burnt tobacco, or strawberry seeds. And by being able to put a name to these aromas, that helps them kind of pull apart complex flavours. And then by simply putting those words out there, saying, can't you get the pepper in this wine? Suddenly you or me, as a non-expert, as soon as we think of pepper, we can sort of smell it in the drink, and so they can actually help us to have a richer flavour experience.
Well, that's interesting. I've always wondered that. Thanks for clearing that up and coming on and talking to us, Dr. Charles Spence, there, experimental psychologist. And as we mentioned, flavour expert at Oxford University, and apologies for some strong language for 11:51.
That's all right. I don't know. I mean, maybe it does smell like that. I don't know. Okay, man.
Which has brought Patrick to...
Sorry, that's absolutely dummy. Okay, all right. Right, we're going to go into the terrifying world of my inbox now, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Totally support Dry January. I've stopped taking a shower. That's from Philip. Nice one, Philip. He's here all week.
Mark, we were speaking about rip-off fees, weren't we? Students being ripped off and taxpayers being ripped off from people never really paying back their student loans because they didn't get a job that will pay them enough. Mark in Birmingham says here, just like private dentists charge rip-off fees, so do universities. The whole thing needs a shake-up. Somebody here whose name I can't find says... both my daughters chose the apprenticeship routes of higher education. My youngest daughter is 21 and has just finished her apprenticeship with a distinction and a full-time job earning $25,000 and no loans to pay back.
Yeah, well, this is it, actually. If you don't go to university and you get yourself a practical trade or do anything, I suppose, really, you know, if you really kick on, I know people like this, you know, if you really kick on, you know, you might be looking at buying your first house when you're 21, 22, you probably own your own car, potentially, you've not got loads of debt, and fundamentally, you're probably you're further on in the career ladder, aren't you? If you're 21 or 22 years old and you've been in industry for 4 years, you're further along than people who've gone to university.
And when you're earning the same as somebody who has gone to university, because you're not paying back your student loan, you could actually be wealthier than that person, even when you're on the exact same salary.
I think we need to do more to encourage practical trades in this country, OK? It seems to be weirdly frowned upon and weirdly stigmatised if someone wants to be a plumber or wants to be... Why? It's a massive skill. I've got no idea what's going on.
We all turn to them, don't we?
We need them.
People who are seen as the lower end of careers, we all need them. They're people we turn to for all manner of things that we can't do ourselves.
It's a skilled job, you know, not being funny, but, you know, like I said, you know, go and study fine art at Leeds back at university, someone who goes off and does an apprenticeship in plumbing is, I'm sorry, more skilled, probably. No offence to anyone who's done fine art at Leeds back at university, of course. Fine institution.
We've been also talking about this morning, Chris Wakeford, is that his name? He's so dull, like I forgot his name already. But he's defected to the Labour Party from the Conservative Party. Tony's got in touch and says Wakeford signed a petition that any defectors should automatically call an election. No hypocrisy here, then.
Absolutely, he did. Also, he is... You can go and see this on... online on Twitter. I cannot repeat the word, of course, unlike our flavour expert earlier, but he's used some derogatory language towards Labour MPs in the past, on a WhatsApp group, to say the very least. So it's going to be very interesting, isn't it, really? I can't help but feel like this man has made a catastrophic mistake. Indeed, someone has got in touch, actually, to say he looks like the kind of person who's just apologising for a heavy night.
Yeah, somebody did say he looks like he's in a hostage video. Like, he just didn't look enthusiastic or charismatic at all.
I'm not sure he's made the right choice here, but, hey, you never know, time will tell. He might win a landslide in the next by-election. Anyway.
Probably, maybe not, though.
There we go. Right, yes, loads of you have obviously been getting in touch. Thank you very much, everyone who's been getting in touch throughout the show. Yeah, and Margaret's just picking up on the Wakeford stuff, calling him a turncoat. He's come on TV, he's felt no shame.
Absolutely. Traitor has been used. Traitor is a word that has been used. And, you know, I think people have been accused in the past of using strong language towards politicians because we know, you know, there have been obviously really serious incidents of harm done towards politicians.
Yeah,
so people say we should tone down our language. But, I mean, look, some might say that that's exactly what he has done. He's betrayed his constituents and the party as well.
It's an interesting one, really, because you look, one would assume that this guy's, you know, you don't just wander into the House of Commons, right? You stand for election, you go through a process, you have to be selected, for example, to be a candidate and everything, and then to all of a sudden just defect to Labour, it just seemed a little bit strange. But anyway, right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a rollercoaster of a show, this one, hasn't it? That's it from us here at To The Point, but don't go away, because up next is the wonderful Gloria Di Piero.
Hello. It is a sparkling day of winter sunshine out there for the vast majority. It's a little fresh, perhaps, but certainly tonight it's going to turn cold with a hard frost forming pretty quickly. Here's the reason why the weather's so settled at the moment. A chunky area of high pressure. But the winds go around the high like that, so they are coming down the North Sea. So it's the east coast that's seeing a fairly brisk and chilly wind, and there are a few showers. Coastal strip of Lincolnshire down into Norfolk in particular, seeing a few showers and a brisk wind. It's quite breezy across the Northern Isles. Any showers here fading away. Some patchy cloud, but for the vast majority